So one thing that was interesting for me was that, so everybody said that as the things go in the distance, they become bluish, or I should say more accurately, atmospheric. For example, a few days ago there was raining here, and I was looking at the distant mountains. My wife and I were roaming around for something, and I was looking at the distant mountains, and they were looking more like the day's color, not blue. So we'll talk about that in a second. But first, the yellow and red, these colors start falling out as you go farther and farther. And the reason is very simple. If you look upwards, so let's say this is this is you, and you are looking upwards. Let's give you a big smile. Have you stand on something. If you look upwards, the sky looks blue. And of course, blue means there is no yellow and there is no red. Correct? It is blue. And the reason for the blue is that as the atmospheric or the water vapor and the particles, they keep coming between you and the distant objects, the red and yellow frequencies, they keep starting to get dispersed through these particles. So what is then left is that as you see farther and farther, you see bluish. And then first the yellow. So let's say if you're standing here now looking into the picture, and I'm hoping that you are making this, now you're facing into the picture. Then as you see the distance occurring, first the blue colors would go away. So for example, let's say, sorry, the yellows would go away. Let's say right near you is green. And the same green actually goes all the way to the endless distance. But for you, very soon from this green, yellow color would drop out. So you would start getting lighter and lighter green first, and it would not have much yellow in it. So if I move this a little further, it would become bluish, and then the red would drop out and it would become more and more blue, and it would become a little lighter as well. So this gray is kind of more saturated for distance. It would become something like this. So this was a very important thing for my own paintings, to understand that as you go further down inside the painting, the colors have to drop out. So if you just made a huge big grassy field that is going too far, even that grassy field would lose colors as you go to the distance. So that is one important thing. The second is, when it loses colors, what is left is not white. What is left is, you can say, that day's sky color. So if the sky is blue, then you are actually seeing sky on this side as well, because now between you and that thing, there is enough distance that the sky has arrived here. And really, sky is nothing but dispersal of the other lights, and blue is there. So the sky color would appear. So that means if the sky is blue, then the darker the distant mountains would look bluer. On the other hand, if the sky is, let's say, gray, then the distant mountain will not look gray. Not look blue. They would look gray. So that is when we do formula painting, meaning we say, all right, everything in the distant should be blue. Then we make these mistakes. So now that painting is a separate thing, I wanted to stay within the line drawing and then create perspective. So let's do that part. So first of all, you decide somewhere a horizon, correct? And let's say we decide that we want to make some things on the ground. So let's say we make some bushes. So we make this little bush. It could be a bush, it can be a little cell, whatever it is. And so let's say we have another bush a little farther. And then we have another bush a little farther, and another bush. The problem with these is that if you look at them, they don't look like they are farther. They just look like they are with each other. The reason, number one, their size is the same, similar. Number two, their color, here the color is really the line color, that is also similar. Number three, their detail or lack thereof is the same as well. And then, excuse me, then texture and so on, then overlapping. None of these triggers are helping us see that this may be a deeper scene. So let's try to do that. Let's start one by one. So let's say here is our horizon and we make a thing here. This is a tree or a person or a bush or something. And then we want to make something farther in. Let's make that small. So this small and big will, even when their detail or level of detail is the same, they're both empty, their line color and weight is the same, the color itself is the same, although blue color is helping me because the distant objects look bluer. So distant or not, the blue is helping. If it was red, then there will be a deception. So if I said here is red and then here is another red, these would look very close to each other because red, if it is too far, the red has to become not red. So right now, what we are getting the benefit of is the size. We are deceiving our eye to say this and this is possibly the same size, same actual reality, same size, but we are seeing them like this. That means there may be a depth in here. So that is a size. However, in reality, things can be present in whatever way. But when you're drawing or painting, you have to take some extra engineering steps to kind of make this illusion even more prominent. So, for example, what you could do is you could take something and overlap them. When you overlap them, the things that are overlapping, of course, one thing would look in front and the other one would look behind it. So overlapping is an important part. And if you would see various painters' work, you would actually see, or the artists who draw with pencils, you would see that they would take lots of pain to create overlaps so that they can convey to you that there is depth in there. It's almost like a language that when we see it, we can perceive, our brain can perceive it, even if we do not know that this is the case. And these artists, they know this language. And this is fascinating that how this language started evolving in European painters' work and how it became a science. And now there are so many ways to create perspective. So size without overlap, then overlap, and the tasteful overlap that you can do, the beautiful it would look. So let's make some little characters that I used to make for diagrams. So I usually do this 1, 2, 3. Then I make this little thing. They're all floating in the air. And then see what I do. I'll just make this little bars behind them. And all of a sudden, it seems like there are more people standing behind them. Right? So if we wanted to give them a little bit of a place and now they're there, you can give them a little expression as well. And there you go. You could give them expressions like this. Check this out. Here, now this guy looks like, if I make it a little bigger, he or she looks like looking at the other side. I should give them arms too. And if I do this, so now they're looking towards each other. And this guy is just totally disgusted with this. And he's like, I am just done with you two. Right? So on the circle, you can put eyes at various places and create different feeling or create different turns of the head. Can you hear me? Jim said lost sound. No sound? Is there no sound? This, let me see. Hello, hello. So it seems like it is working. Can you hear me? Okay. Jim says no sound and others are saying there is sound. So maybe sound is fine. Okay. John Snyder says the one on the far right is a girl. Okay, so now I have a problem. To make a girl, so this is my general challenge, and I think I should learn. I do not know how to make boobs. So maybe, maybe, but this is not entirely accurate. Anyways, if this was a girl and I drew her picture, she'll be really upset with me. But I learn. So plus, I think we should give her a pony or something, and one more pony. so, so now this works. So she has ponies, and she's totally disgusted and looking the other way. I am done. Get a room or something. So here, ponies, red, some more hair on the head as well. Okay, so back to the discussion here for the how to create depth, and please do that with me. Just draw a bunch of circles like this, and then take out some lines. This is how I draw it for the lecture as well when I have to create overlaps. I just draw a bunch of circles and then I take out some pieces, and all of a sudden it looks like there is overlap, and that overlap tells me what is in front and what is in the back. Now you must probably observe that as these are similarly, the line weight and the color is very same. They look very close to each other, but they still give us a feeling of depth. Correct? Kini, thank you very much. Helene B says long hair. Okay, so I think we are. Okay, so here, should we give her like? So now you're gonna get this whole thing in trouble. She's gonna become so upset. So her long hair, can she have long hair with the ponies? Aren't ponies actually the hair pulled up? Okay, so long hair. How is she now? So back to the the more we draw a detail, the more she becomes angry. Okay, so now we have this as well. So size and overlapping. Two things. Third thing is the detail. So for example, if I said there is something here and something here, and let me draw a horizon line. Now let's say here, this is a bush or a plant or something, and I make a lot of detail on this one that you can see. Let's say the light is here. So now there is going to be a little shadow here. This part of this little figure is in the shadow as well, right? While this guy over here, I'm going to take a more, this guy may have detail too, but we cannot really see that much of detail. So this would be the second thing that would create an illusion of depth. For example, if you're making trees, the farther trees will not have as much leaves and details. So what you will do is, if you're making a tree that is far away, that tree would just look like something like this, and that's it. And a tree that is near, that tree, so let's say this is that tree, it is near. This tree would have lots of details and leaves and shadows and lights and of course an overlap. And all of a sudden, this thing will look closer. And look at this. These two things, just by accident, they are not overlapping each other. And this creates a real big tension in our head. So I accidentally did it, but look at this. Here, this, let's say the trunk of the tree is starting way here. It looks like the tree is actually in front. While this ball or a bush, this seems to be a little behind. But here, these guys are connecting just so closely, and their detail is so closely matched that they look like they're on the same plane. So that then seems like this tree starts from here and then kind of leans backward enough that it is on the same plane with this one. So this is a perspective anomaly which happens as you're just witnessing. So I can correct that by extending this tree a little bit. I'll have to do a couple of things here. Number one, I'll extend this tree a little bit, and that way I can overlap it, and that gives us a message that this other structure is behind it. But you see there is another problem. The other problem is detail here. So let's say this tree has a detail, and it is totally fine to just draw it like this. We are just having fun, right? So this is the tree. Now, if I reduce, see, there is still competition here. You're still getting this tension that what the heck? Why are they both looking at the same level? So what you do is you reduce the detail here. And as soon as you would start reducing the detail, that thing would start pushing backwards. I want to remove these lines that are tangent with it. So now I'm going to put the detail back in this tree. But so now you would see that as I put the detail here, so let's say if I was able to use some marker, you would see all of a sudden this would look like it is here. And look at this tree. This part still looks like it is far in the distance. Why? Because there is not enough detail here. Detail actually brings things to the front. If you were painting, a little more saturation brings things to the front. So if I now did this, check this out, I'm going to paint it. So let's say this is the front. This guy, the bush, is a little behind. And so, and this guy is even more behind, a little bluish. too saturated for this particular situation, but let's make it a little less saturated. So now this thing would look like it is farther. Oh, my markers. That tree looks like that black is still giving us a hallucination that it is in front. But if I kind of convert this whole thing into bluish, you'll feel a better feeling that it is farther. And now if I restructure this tree, now we are front. Right? So it is such an important thing to create this depth. All you have to do is look at the size, the front things bigger, look at the overlaps, and if you see you want to paint something. So let's say we go here and we say pictures, landscape pictures. And so let's say these are all beautiful pictures. Let's take this one. So here, as you're looking at these details, imagine if you saw another tree that is sitting right next to it, but separately. Then create an overlap, restructure it in a way that you can talk with the viewer and you're saying, hey, viewer, this thing is in the front, this thing is a little behind, and this is too behind. That is the language. Size, texture. The more texture. So I used to make a mistake that I would go to this distant thing and I'll make all kind of leaves and things on that as well. As soon as you make texture, so look, it is blue. That means the yellow color has fallen out, red has fallen out. So ideally, it is a very distant thing. But as soon as you put the texture, this tree just ran and came very close to this one. Now this is a close tree and maybe its color is blue. Right? So if I remove those marks that I made with the dark or saturated blue and I bring it back to this light blue, all of a sudden, this is the farther off place. So texture, color. Then there is another thing, and that is line weight. Here, ideally, the things that are closer, they would have more shadows there as well, correct? And the lines are darker when you are drawing with pencil, where there are shadows. And so when you're seeing shadows, you'll have a darker, thicker line weight. And when you would see farther thing, imagine if I give it this line weight to that farther thing, all of a sudden that illusion is broken. Even if I took the blue color, let's take blue color and do this. Once again, that line weight is now deceiving us because we think it is farther in. So if you are doing this with a pencil, how do you create this perspective? And try this with me. Do this. Let's say you have a pencil, normal pencil, and do something. Make, let's say this is a horizon, make a ball like this, and then make another ball like this, that they're overlapping. Now, take your eraser, and I'm going to take my digital eraser and just erase this line sufficient to reduce its darkness or saturation. And you can also then do this. You can take your line and kind of darken parts of this. Don't darken the whole figure, because then it would just look like a cutout. But if you darkened part of it, let's say the light was from this side. So if you darken this part, then do this. all of a sudden, this would give you a feeling that this is in front and this is behind. It would be great that the amount of perspective that it is showing, if it was a little bluer instead of this dark color, it would have looked better. So if I do this and then I go back to my eraser and kind of erase this bluer looks better and farther. Right? So size, overlap, texture, color, detail, all of them matter. So now let's see if there was anything else I missed in that. Where did that go? I think I accidentally closed that one, but we can. So let's do one more exercise. I love to do this exercise. Here is what I do. I draw something, for example, let's say here, I draw a thing. Let's make it black. Right? Then I draw something over here. A little farther. It should overlap and all that, but let's just do this. Now what I do is I take my eraser and I go over this once. Then I go back to my pen and I make one more item here. And then I take my eraser again and I go that once more and I go over this once. And all of a sudden, these three things look like they are in the distance. What I'm doing really is, and I love to do this exercise, what I'm doing is I'm trying to produce a curtain of atmosphere between them. So every curtain of atmosphere would lighten up these things and reduce their detail. I just go over these with the eraser, as every time I go over them, that is one curtain added. And this is, so look, the more I do this, the more these would look like they are going in distance. Although their size is so big that the lightness of the line is saying that this size should actually be smaller. If it was something like this, and I had this lightness, this one, if you see, if I can erase this guy, this little guy would look more, give an illusion of being farther, better than the other guy. Why? Because the size was giving us a deception that that is closer, but the lightness was giving us, or lack of detail and all that was giving us a feeling it is far. So we were getting confused. So this is such an interesting thing that you can actually, I'm going to draw one more thing. You can actually do this with the near objects. For example, I'm going to make a box here. Right? So now we have a box, and let me, in this box, this line is closer to us. This line is a little farther from us. Same is the case here. So I could do this. Check this out. Have the impression of this thing. Actually, let me make a copy of this just for fun. Make a copy and leave it here. I'm going to go back to the other one. Let's do this. I'm going to take an eraser and just gently reduce the color. What just happened? This box versus this box. You feel a difference between them? Do you feel a difference between them? Do you know what just happened? This box has these lines kind of disappearing. That means, and these lines are more dark and clear. It seems like this is a big box, a big building. We are standing somewhere here, and this is farther from us. 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 And this is closer. So you could actually do this within one object and create such a pleasing feeling for the viewer that they sometimes go crazy with that. So, for example, imagine you were putting some color in it. And let's say there is some atmospheric, some background color. Apologies for my rough work. But let's say there is some background color now, right? Let's give it a little really bright green. Okay, so now there is this we standing here, this royal we, and we're looking at this box. And now if I did this, if I took my eraser and kind of erased this box in a way that it kind of just merged and disappeared. And let me take this color, my brushes. So this is not the best software to create this illusion, but you would see that all of a sudden this part, the part above, almost looks like farther away, maybe in the clouds, and it's disappearing. This is with this not the best software, which only has the round brush with some opacity. This is something that is called the painterly. We could do such things where some edges are disappearing, mixing with the background, and we actually find that to be very tasteful. So we'll do the edges lost and found at a later time. But here my reason for doing this was to create an atmospheric perspective. My brushes are not the best. Now look at this. As soon as I put this back up, that box that was lost and was big and away, all of a sudden has come back closer. Elquin says B needs to crack out the MS Paint. Yes, I do. So back to the original discussion. Color, even temperature of the color. And temperature of the color is how warm it looks, how red or orange or yellow it looks. And further things start becoming blue, we know that. And you can say that these start becoming cooler. Closer things are more saturated, have higher line weights, and then they have more detail in them. Overlap, size, texture are all going to make up the. So if I took one more example here, so let's say we have a little cliff. On this cliff, there is a big rock here. And then there is another big rock here. To make this illusion a little more convincing, what we can do is, so first of all, let's extend this horizon. Let's extend this as well. take this out. So now let's create depth in this. Look, some lines like this will give us a feeling that this is deeper and it is in front. If I did the same here, same amount of pressure, same weight, same darkness, it does create an illusion of depth, but this whole thing looks closer. But if I went in, so let's do this. I'm going to take that eraser and I'll do the same thing. I'll go over this once and then I'll go over the distant part once more. And all of a sudden, you can actually see that this part is farther than this. I should probably give a little more color here, right? And so let's just do a few more here. Now, how about these guys? How about this line? How about this line? So I'm going to take my eraser, kind of erase this a little bit as well. And do you feel that there is already a sense of depth in here? Now, I could go in here and I could say, let's say this is the rock's face and this is another part of the rock. And then here, this is another face and so on. And so I could then kind of create some shadows here. So let's say the light is coming from this side. So let's make some cracks in the rock. So to make cracks, you just make so you make something like this. Make a triangle and then go rigid lines, sharp angles. And then that would look like a crack. This would also look like a tree, right? And if you make it in the rock, it would look like a crack. So let's make a few cracks here. Another crack here, right? And so what we are doing is we are adding details. The more detail we are adding, the more this rock would look like it is in the front. And let's give it some shadow as well, right? It looks little leaning here. And there is a problem in this rock, and that problem is this edge. It is rounded, and rounded edges on the rocks, they do not look that accurate, even if you have in reality a rock that is rounded, has a rounded edge. So here we have a bunch of detail and texture in this rock, right? Now, if we go to this one and we take a lighter color, dark, we make that too over there. And I'm going to take my eraser and kind of go over that little more. I've gone too much, but I hope the message. So all of a sudden that looks back. It would be even better if I was overlapping it. So let's first correct this edge. Right? Do you do you see that this looks farther, this looks closer, this looks farther, this looks farther, this looks closer? It would be even more interesting if I took this guy. Let's take this guy. I'm going to make a copy and then bring it behind it and then erase the part that is behind this rock. And also erase this horizon line from it. So although this is not the best way of overlapping, but still I think it conveys the message that this thing is behind dark to saturated. 1 second. Right? So if I took this brush and did this, these things look farther back. Now, check this out. Excuse me. There is a competition between these two. Do you see that there is a tension that which one is farther? Is this the farther one or this one the farther one? The reason is this actually has a lighter color than this. This has less detail than this. And so this looks like it should be closer, but because of the lighter color and less detail, it looks like it is farther. So we are confused that why is this farther but still more detailful? So I'm going to take my eraser and I would reduce some of the detail here. And it's all fixed. Now we have this is first, this is overlapped second, this is third. So, all right, let's do this. Who said put a river? Someone said put a river. So I'm going to put a river. So let's do this. Let's say, right now, look at the tension between this and this. Here, we feel that they both are similarly farther, but this has an atmospheric perspective. This does not. The whole illusion is breaking. That means when you are drawing or when you're painting, you have to keep the illusion going in every single line of the work. So let me work on that illusion. So I'm going to take my eraser and kind of erase parts of this. So too much erased. So looks much better. If I now add the lines, those little the river that my uncle taught me. So let me now fix those lines once more in a similar way. So there, ideally I should have drawn that whole thing together and then erased them together in the right structure. So, okay, but let's say this is the river. Now let's make some water in it. The easiest way to make water is you can just do something like this and get away with it. Especially if you do it near the banks, it would look like water. And then you can do something like this. And it looks like water. Now the problem is this water lines, they are also similar black color. So I have to do the erasing on them as well. And voila, we have I have erased too much of these parts. Poor river must be saying, what the heck? So let's reconstruct some parts of it. And then erase them again. And I hope that this gives you a feeling that there is depth there. Although, do you see that there is a tension from this edge, this edge? This edge is kind of protruding upwards and giving a feeling that it is closer, but we can live with it. Now you can add things to it. For example, you can make a big trunk. So if you are making some simple artistic pictures, make trees that are very um, that have these sharp angles to them. You would see that they would look really interesting. So let's say we have this, and then I'm going to make a little thing, right? So now what I'll do is I'll color it. I'll do the erasing part afterwards. And I'm going to cheat now. I'm going to take the big brush and fill it. Sorry. So the whole thing is now here. The problem is this is more saturated than this. And so where is it? Is this tree actually farther, but then closer than this? So if I did something like this, you would see that now this rock came back to the front. Or alternatively, what can I do? I can go and make this guy light. So if I took the color out of the rock and then I took my eraser and went here and kind of made it a little lighter, all of a sudden that tree has gone farther deep. So now I hope you can see that there is this that is close. This is rather close as well. This is farther, this is farther, this is farther. This edge, this river, this edge, all are far. I could probably lighten this guy up a little more and kind of synchronize them a little more. So how does it look? Right? So the biggest problem that we get is to create atmosphere. We can actually draw and sketch various things. So 1 second. I'm going to take this layer panel. So I want to show you something. If I took this little illustration, made a copy of this, and then check out, I'm going to break the illusion. If I did this, these things which are now getting these lines, darker lines in them, they would all of a sudden look like they're closer. And if I make some more detail, so this thing that seemed a few minutes ago that it was receding farther, all of a sudden it looks like, well, we are standing in the park here and there's just a few feet away. And now the tension is that these guys look farther away, but the same distance here looks near. We've broken the illusion. So what we do is, once again, we go in here and we, meaning you got to be just to the whole scenario. Otherwise, the illusion will break. So now it is also a scene, although there is a tension between these two trees, that which one is in front, because from, if you look at their trunks start, they look like this is farther and this is closer, but from their detail and colors, they look similarly positioned. So I've kind of broken this illusion. If you broke it tastefully, you can actually create a more close scene. If you broke it just accidentally, then user would get, so I'm sure that this area is really bothering you because this and this are just competing. And this color of this guy and the colors here, they're just not working. Susan says the rock looks like it has a lamb face with a bonnet on it. That is funny. So this is the discussion for today, that how to create the illusion of perspective. And that can be done with, thank you. That can be done with size, overlap, line weight, color, saturation, scale, detail, warmth of the color, coolness of the color. It would be one last point. Let's say if we go back to this picture and I take some bright red and I put that here, all of a sudden I've broken the whole illusion, because red, this thing looked like it was receding, it was back somewhere, but making it red meant it is in front, because red in farther does not look like red. Red far off would look like purple, because red is reducing and blue is appearing. And so the far off things would first start looking like purple and then they'll become blue. You can actually see this. These two dots already probably give you a feeling that this is something in the distance and more in the distance. For example, I could do this. One last part. I could take this and it still competes. The saturation of this blue or the gray that I'm putting in, it competes with these guys. So I can lighten it up. Normally mountains are a little lighter at the bottom. So here, these bluish mountains seems like they're far off. If they were a little closer, they'll become first purple, and then more closer would start becoming normal colors. So this is the discussion. I hope it made sense. And my usual request, like, subscribe, and share. And there are links in the description if you would like to support this work. And I hope you try more of this and play with it and let your brain be frustrated about it and be tense about it and let exercise it. And that would be useful for it. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.